The rain fell in sharp, relentless sheets, bouncing off the city streets and turning sidewalks into mirrors. Ava hurried through the crowd, her coat soaked, shoes squelching with each step. She didn't notice the stares or the occasional muttered comment. All that mattered was the sound of her brother coughing inside the small clinic ahead. When she reached the building, she saw the line of people waiting for help, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She didn't hesitate. She ran inside, dripping water across the worn tile floor, and made her way to the back room where her brother sat. I'm fine," he whispered hoarsely. "You're not fine," Ava said, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead. "You can't go on like this." Her brother shook his head weakly, his chest heaving. "I'll be okay." "No," she said firmly. "You need rest, medicine, and food, and I'm not letting you do this alone." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. She had no money, barely enough food for the week, and yet she had made a promise to herself that she would protect him, no matter the cost. Across the city, in a high-rise office of glass and steel, someone watched her. Julian Cade, a billionaire industrialist known for his ruthlessness in business, leaned back in his chair, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He wasn't watching her on purpose. Not initially, but the camera feed from the philanthropic program he funded had caught a glimpse of her earlier, helping the sick and desperate in the underfunded clinic his charity supported. She moved with urgency, purpose, and courage that drew his attention. Julian was accustomed to observing patterns, predicting outcomes, and controlling environments. But there was something different about her, something raw, unpolished, human. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen as she worked tirelessly, bringing water, administering medicine, offering comfort. Julian knew many people helped out of self-interest or reputation. But this was different. This was sacrifice. Hours later, the storm outside relented, but inside the clinic the pressure remained. Ava had distributed the last of the supplies and even given her own lunch to a family in desperate need. She had gone without herself to ensure others survived. By late afternoon, her exhaustion became visible. Her movements slowed, her hands shook slightly, and her breathing grew heavier. A volunteer approached, carrying a box of supplies. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident. Ava shook her head faintly. I'll be fine, just tired. Sit down," he insisted. "Let someone else take over for a while." Ava tried to protest, but she felt herself swaying, the relentless pace catching up. She sank into a chair, taking a deep breath, closing her eyes for just a moment. From miles away, Julian continued to watch. His office overlooked the glittering city skyline, but all he could see was her, sacrificing herself so that others might live a fraction more comfortably that day. He knew that most people would stop when exhausted, would think of themselves first, but she didn't. She gave everything she had, and yet there was no recognition, no applause, no gratitude beyond the brief, quiet thanks of the patients. He put down his glass and stood. For the first time in years, he felt something that wasn't strategy, profit, or competition. He felt awe and a twinge of guilt. What he had amassed with wealth and influence couldn't protect her, couldn't ensure that she didn't burn herself out completely, and he realized he had a choice to make. Ava's phone buzzed. She reached for it, seeing a message from her brother. "Don't push yourself too hard. I'll be okay. Please rest." She smiled faintly, tired but determined. She responded, "I can't. Not until everyone is safe." That moment, Julian made his decision. He wasn't going to watch someone give everything for others without stepping in. He wasn't going to remain a distant observer. The next move he made would change the trajectory of both their lives, though neither of them could yet know it. He called his personal assistant. "Arrange a meeting with her," he instructed. "I want to see the woman who would give everything, even herself, without hesitation." "Yes, sir," the assistant replied. But Julian didn't wait for questions. He knew exactly what he was doing. As the rain stopped and the city began to glisten in the late afternoon sun, Ava continued her work, unaware that someone powerful, influential, and relentless had noticed her, that her sacrifice had not gone unseen, that her life was about to intersect with his in ways she could never have imagined. And Julian, standing in his office, felt a rare, unfamiliar sense of urgency, not for a deal, not for a merger, not for profit, but to act, to intervene, to ensure that her selflessness did not come at the cost of her life. That decision, made quietly, would ripple across both their worlds. The next morning, Ava arrived at the clinic early, the sky still gray with the remnants of the storm. Her coat was damp from the drizzle, her hair slightly disheveled, and dark circles traced the curve of her eyes. Despite the exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders, she moved with purpose, ready to continue her work. She didn't notice the sleek black car that had stopped quietly outside, nor the security detail that had already parked strategically along the street. Inside, Julian watched from a distance, preferring to see her in her natural element before making his presence known. Ava was tending to an elderly patient when a young man in a sharp suit entered. He carried himself with professional confidence, yet there was a careful gentleness in his eyes. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Ava. "I'm looking for Ava?" She looked up, frowning slightly. "Yes. Can I help you?" "I'm Matthew, assistant to Mr. Julian Cade," he said politely. "He wishes to meet you. It's important." Ava blinked. "Mr. Cade? The businessman?" "Yes," Matthew replied. "He's very interested in your work. He requested to see you personally." Ava's frown deepened. I don't understand. I'm just doing my job. Why would someone like him care?" Matthew's expression softened. "He's been following your work. He admires your dedication. Please, will you come with me?" Ava hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. She had never sought recognition, and the idea of meeting a billionaire who had been observing her every move felt intrusive, even intimidating. Yet something in Matthew's tone, a combination of respect and urgency, convinced her to follow. The ride was silent, except for the occasional instruction Matthew gave to the driver. They drove through the city streets, sleek buildings rising on either side, until they arrived at a modern high-rise. The lobby gleamed with polished marble, and a sense of controlled wealth hung in the air. Ava felt small, almost out of place, but she pushed her nerves aside. Matthew led her to a private elevator and pressed a floor number. The doors closed and she felt her heart beat faster with each passing floor. When the elevator doors opened, she was greeted by a minimalist office, walls lined with books and artwork, and sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. And there he was, Julian Cade. He stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the city. The quiet authority he radiated was palpable, yet his eyes softened slightly as he turned toward her. "You must be Ava," he said, voice calm and deliberate. "Thank you for seeing me." She swallowed nervously. I'm not sure why you're here. I didn't do anything special." "You did," he said simply. "You sacrificed yourself for others when no one else would. That kind of courage, it deserves recognition." Ava looked down, embarrassed. "I wasn't thinking about recognition, I was just helping people who needed it." "And that's precisely why I wanted to meet you," Julian replied. "Most people would pause, consider their own safety. You didn't. You acted." Her heart thumped. She had never experienced this kind of attention before, especially from someone of his stature. Yet there was a sincerity in his gaze that made it difficult to look away. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why not anyone else?" Julian gestured for her to sit, and she complied reluctantly. "Because I watch many people, many organizations. Most do what is convenient, what enhances their reputation. You gave without expectation. That is rare, that is valuable." Ava's hands fidgeted in her lap. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he replied, leaning back slightly. "Just understand this. Your actions have consequences beyond what you imagine. By helping others, you've not only saved lives, you've inspired me to do something I wouldn't have otherwise considered." Ava's brow furrowed. "Inspired you?" "Yes," Julian said. "I've seen enough suffering from a distance, enough inefficiency and indifference. Your dedication reminded me why people matter, and because of that, I've made a decision that will affect your life and many others." She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What kind of decision?" "You'll see," he said, voice measured, almost teasing. "But first, I want to know more about you, your work, your challenges, your motivations. I don't offer hell. Pee lightly, Ava, but I believe we can make a difference together." Over the next hour, Ava spoke about her life, the clinic, her brother, the patients who came daily, the lack of resources, the constant struggle to provide even basic care. Julian listened intently, asking questions, taking mental notes, occasionally interjecting with suggestions or insights that were startlingly practical. "I understand your limitations," he said after a pause, "and I also understand the potential. What you've accomplished with so little, it's remarkable. But it could be even more remarkable with proper support." Ava's eyes widened. "Support? You mean funding?" "I mean resources, yes," he said, "but also guidance, infrastructure, and protection. I'm in a position to provide that. But I don't want charity, I want collaboration. I want someone willing to act as fiercely as you have, with me, to create real change." She hesitated. The offer was enormous, life-altering, but it came with a weight she hadn't anticipated. The expectation, responsibility, and public scrutiny of working alongside someone like Julian Cade. Julian leaned forward, his gaze locking with hers. "You risked yourself without hesitation. That courage without calculation is why I came to you. I'm asking you to extend that courage further with me. Together we can transform lives, not just save them momentarily." Ava's pulse raced. Her instinct was to say yes, to embrace the opportunity to expand her impact, to ensure her sacrifices weren't just fleeting. Yet doubt lingered. Could she trust him? Could she handle the implications of stepping into his world? Julian seemed to read her hesitation. "I don't expect an answer now. Think about it. Your bravery earned this. Your conscience, your heart, they decide whether you take the next step. But know this, time is sensitive, and opportunity doesn't wait." Ava nodded, absorbing the gravity of his words. She left the office with her mind racing, the storm outside replaced by a clear, crisp sky. The city looked different now, illuminated by possibility, danger, and the potential for profound change. That night, as Ava prepared for bed, she thought about the day, Julian's words, and the decision looming over her. Her sacrifices had always been quiet, unnoticed. Now they had drawn the attention of someone who could alter the course of her life, and the lives of countless others. She realized with both excitement and fear that her choice would define the next chapter of her existence. She could remain in the shadows, continuing to help as she always had, or she could step forward, embrace this opportunity, and risk everything for something greater. And as she drifted to sleep, she knew one thing with certainty. Whatever choice she made, she would never be the same. The next morning, Ava woke before dawn, her mind still tangled with thoughts of Julian's proposal. She had never imagined that her quiet work in the small clinic could draw the attention of someone so powerful. But now, his words echoed in her mind. "Your courage earned this. Your conscience decides the next step." She dressed quickly and made her way to the clinic, where her brother and the staff were already bustling. She moved efficiently, administering medicine, distributing food, and checking vital signs. Yet even amidst the familiar chaos, her mind lingered on Julian and the op-ord. Unity he had offered. By mid-morning, a black SUV arrived outside. Matthew, Julian's assistant stepped out and entered the clinic. "Ava," he said, voice low but firm, "Mr. Cade has requested you join him at the Foundation headquarters. Today is the first step." Ava's stomach tightened. This wasn't a social call. This was stepping into a world she had only glimpsed from afar. I'll need to make arrangements here first," she said cautiously. "You've already made arrangements," Matthew replied, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Your presence is required. Your work here is trusted, but today, you're needed elsewhere." The drive to Julian's headquarters was quiet. Ava watched the city blur past the tinted windows, her thoughts racing. She had seen wealth before, but never like this. The building was an architectural marvel, a fusion of glass, steel, and sunlight. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with purpose. Staff moved quickly, efficiently, and Julian's presence was immediately felt even before she saw him. He was waiting in the main office, reviewing reports. When he looked up and saw her enter, a subtle shift softened his usually imperious demeanor. "You made it," he said, voice low. "I did," she replied, trying to keep her nerves steady. "You're early," he noted, gesturing for her to sit. "Good. That shows initiative." Ava swallowed. I wasn't sure what to expect." "You should expect challenges," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Opportunities are always accompanied by tests. Today is the first." He led her to a conference room filled with charts, maps, and a series of projected screens. "We've identified areas where your skills can immediately make an impact," he explained. "We have several clinics in underprivileged neighborhoods that need oversight, organization, and hands-on leadership. You'll be coordinating with our teams." Ava's heart skipped. She had coordinated small-scale operations before, but this was massive. Thousands of lives, dozens of staff, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily. I'm not sure I'm ready for something this big," she admitted. "You don't need to be ready," Julian said. "You need to act. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's taking action despite it. You've already proven that." Her pulse quickened. His words were both reassuring and terrifying. She'd acted for others countless times, but now she realized the stakes had been raised exponentially. The first site visit was scheduled for that afternoon. Ava traveled with Julian and his team to a neighborhood clinic in desperate need of resources. As they arrived, she saw the conditions firsthand: leaking roofs, limited supplies, overcrowded rooms, and patients waiting in line for hours. "This is where we begin," Julian said quietly. "Assess the needs, make decisions, and don't hesitate to take action." Ava moved through the rooms, clipboard in hand, evaluating, delegating, and instructing. She coordinated with staff, implemented immediate solutions for critical cases, and even comforted frightened children and exhausted parents. Julian observed silently from the background, occasionally offering guidance, but largely letting her lead. By the time they finished, the clinic was transformed. Minor repairs had been organized, essential supplies redistributed, and systems put in place to streamline patient care. The staff looked to Ava with a mix of awe and gratitude. Julian finally approached her. "You exceeded expectations," he said. "I didn't doubt you, but even I am impressed." Ava felt a flush of pride. I just did what needed to be done."
"Exactly," he said.
"And that's why I chose you. You see action, not accolades." The ride back to headquarters was quieter than before. Ava, exhausted but exhilarated, finally allowed herself a moment to reflect. Julian's presence beside her was steady, calm, and reassuring. She noticed subtle details: the way he watched the streets, the slight tension in his hands, the intensity of his gaze, and realized that he was constantly evaluating, planning, and protecting. "You're relentless," she said finally, breaking the silence. "And you are," he replied with a faint smile. "Relentless in purpose, courageous in action. It's rare, and it's why you belong in this world now, Ava. Not just as an observer, but as an active participant." Her stomach tightened. Belonging. I'm not sure I can fully grasp that yet. You will, he said softly. Courage, dedication, and the willingness to sacrifice. Those are universal currencies in any world. You have all three. That evening, as they returned to the mansion, a new challenge presented itself. A patient who had received care at one of the clinics had fallen critically ill. Julian insisted they act immediately. Ava, though exhausted, agreed. Together they coordinated emergency transport, assigned personnel, and monitored the patient's progress remotely. Watching her in action, Julian realized something profound. Her sacrifice wasn't just bravery. It was instinct, intelligence, and heart intertwined. She didn't just give time or energy. She gave strategy, decisiveness, and an unwavering commitment to those in need. Later, when the crisis had been stabilized, Julian looked at her with a new intensity. I've watched many people sacrifice, he said quietly, but few inspire me to act. You've changed how I see what's possible. Ava met his gaze, understanding dawning. Then, what happens now? Julian's lips curved into a faint smile. Now, we move forward together. But understand this, your choices will shape outcomes far beyond what you can imagine. And I will be watching. Not as a judge, but as someone who trusts your heart and your instincts. That night, Ava lay in bed, exhausted and exhilarated. She thought about the storm, the patience, Julian, and the day's events. For the first time, she realized that her sacrifices were not unnoticed. They had drawn the attention of someone powerful, someone who recognized courage, and someone willing to act because of it. She closed her eyes, a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through her. Her life had already changed, and she knew it would continue to evolve in ways she could never have anticipated. The first test had passed, but she understood this was only the beginning. Challenges, danger, and opportunity lay ahead, and now, she was no longer just a caregiver in the shadows. She was a partner, a leader, and someone whose courage could reshape the lives of countless others. And Julian, watching from afar, knew that the decision he had made, to step in, to act, to recognize her sacrifice, had already changed everything. The morning air was crisp, carrying a faint chill that hinted at change. Ava arrived at the Foundation headquarters, her Min D still buzzing from the previous day's events. Clinics were running more efficiently, patients' needs were being met faster, and she had begun to feel a sense of accomplishment she hadn't known in years. But today felt different. As she entered the main hall, Matthew approached her, urgency in his eyes. "Dr. Ava," he said quietly, "we have a situation. One of the outreach clinics has reported a violent disturbance. Staff and patients are in immediate danger." Ava's stomach twisted. "What kind of disturbance?" "Armed intruders," Matthew replied. "They're demanding access to supplies and threatening staff. They know our operations." Ava froze for a moment, her mind racing. She had faced challenges before, but this was the first time she would confront danger directly. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Show me." Within minutes, Ava was in a sleek black SUV, Julian riding beside her, silent but tense. As the cityscape blurred past, she observed him closely. Julian Cade, calm, collected, commanding, even in the face of imminent danger. His presence reassured her, yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Are you ready?" he asked finally, breaking the tense silence. Ava swallowed. "As ready as I'll ever be." He nodded, giving a small approving smile. "Good. Courage isn't about the absence of fear. It's about acting despite it. You've already proven that." They arrived at the clinic to chaos. Windows were shattered, staff were huddled in corners, and frightened families clung to each other. The intruders, masked and armed, were moving methodically through the building, collecting supplies and shouting threats. Julian surveyed the situation quickly. "Va," he said, "coordinate with the staff. Ensure everyone is safe. I'll handle the intruders." Her heart pounded. I can't just stand back. You will, he said firmly. Trust me, your focus must be on protecting the innocent. That is your role. She nodded, trying to steady her racing thoughts. She moved through the building, guiding families to safe zones, securing exits, and providing immediate medical attention to those who were hurt. Her hands shook slightly, but her mind remained sharp. Meanwhile, Julian engaged the intruders. He moved with a calculated precision, authoritative and commanding. Even as tension crackled in the air, he remained composed, issuing commands to his security team with quiet efficiency. Ava watched from a safe distance, her admiration for him deepening, not just for his power, but for the way he protected others without hesitation. Minutes felt like hours. Then one of the intruders broke ranks and approached a small group of children. Ava's instincts screamed. Without thinking, she ran toward them, shouting, "Stay back!" Julian noticed instantly. He adjusted his position, intercepting the threat just as Ava reached the children. The intruder hesitated, caught between the two of them, before retreating. Ava's heart raced. Julian's gaze met hers briefly, calm, controlled, but with something unspoken: recognition, approval, and gratitude. Once the intruders had fled and authorities were on the way, Julian approached Ava. She was trembling, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "You acted," he said quietly, "and you did exactly what was necessary. Calm, focused, decisive. I couldn't have asked for more. She stammered, still trying to catch her breath. "I couldn't just let them hurt anyone. You saved lives today," he said. "And in doing so, you've proven what I already knew. Your courage and heart are extraordinary. I've watched your sacrifices, Ava, and now I've seen your strength under fire." Ava looked at him, emotions swirling, fear, relief, pride, and something deeper she didn't fully understand. "I just did what I had to do." Julian placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "And that is why I made the decision to bring you into this world. You're not just a helper, you're a partner. Someone whose judgment and courage can shape outcomes and save lives." Her chest tightened. His words carried weight, promise, and something intimate she hadn't expected. Back at headquarters that evening, the weight of the day settled over them both. Ava sat quietly, reviewing reports, while Julian observed her. "You stayed composed today," he said. "Even when fear threatened to overwhelm you." I had to," she replied. "People depended on me. I couldn't fail them." "Exactly," he said, voice softening. "And that's why you inspire me. You act selflessly, decisively, and with unwavering courage. And because of that, I've made a choice, one that changes everything for both of us." Ava's pulse quickened. "A choice?" "Yes," Julian said, taking a deep breath. "I've decided to make you my partner, not only in the foundation but in life. I've watched you sacrifice, risk yourself, and act with unparalleled bravery. And now, I don't want you to face the world alone." Ava's eyes widened. "You mean that?" "I do," he said simply, his gaze steady and sincere. "I want us to face challenges together, to protect, to build, to act. Why? You've proven your heart, your courage, and your strength. I trust you, Ava. Completely." Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight and gravity of his declaration. She realized that her sacrifices, her tireless work, her selfless dedication had led her here, to a place where her courage was not only recognized but valued and honored. The weeks that followed cemented their bond. Ava continued to lead clinics, organize relief operations, and make real, lasting change in countless lives. Julian provided resources, guidance, and protection, but he also treated her as an equal, valuing her judgment, instincts, and courage. Together, they faced obstacles, threats, and crises, each one testing their limits, yet also deepening their trust. Every challenge became an opportunity to learn from each other, to grow together, and to witness the extraordinary strength that comes from partnership. One evening, as they watched the city lights from the rooftop of the foundation building, Julian spoke softly. "You've changed everything," he said. "Not just my perspective, but my world. Watching your sacrifices, seeing your heart in action, it made me realize what truly matters." Ava leaned against him, exhausted but exhilarated. "And you've changed mine," she whispered. He smiled, taking her hand. "Then we face whatever comes next, together." And under the night sky, Ava understood the truth. Her sacrifices had not only saved lives, they had transformed her destiny. And Julian's decision, made after watching her courage, had changed everything. The city was quiet that morning, but Ava sensed the tension in the air. The events of the past weeks, the clinics, the crises, the intruders, had transformed her life. She had gone from a solitary caregiver in a small, overlooked clinic to a key partner in a foundation that reached hundreds of lives every day. Yet she knew the work was far from over. Julian had insisted that the next initiative would be their most ambitious, opening a new network of clinics in the most underserved districts of the city. This would stretch resources, staff, and courage to the limit. As she arrived at headquarters, Matthew was waiting with a briefing. "Dr. Ava, Mr. Cade wants to meet immediately. There's a situation at the East Side Clinic, possible structural damage after yesterday's storm." Her stomach tightened. Storms, dangers, crises, they all seemed relentless now. But she had grown stronger, more decisive, more aware of her own abilities. She nodded. "Lead the way." Julian was already at the site when they arrived, surveying the damage with his usual meticulous precision. The roof had partially collapsed, flooding parts of the clinic, and some of the patients' rooms were inaccessible. Staff and volunteers were coordinating evacuation and care. "You assessed quickly," Julian said as she joined him, eyes scanning the unstable structure. "But we'll need your judgment. Which patients move first? Which areas can be safely used?" Ava's heart pounded. Decisions here could mean life or death. She moved confidently, prioritizing children, elderly, and those with critical conditions. She directed staff, assigned volunteers, and even climbed onto safer portions of the roof to secure medical supplies. Julian observed silently, impressed by her composure and courage. He had seen her in crises before, but this was different. Her authority, decisiveness, and compassion were commanding in their own right. As they worked, a sudden creak echoed through the building. A portion of the remaining roof shifted precariously. Ava froze for a moment, calculating the risk. Julian noticed immediately. "Step back," he shouted, his hand reaching for hers. But Ava didn't move. Instead, she barked. Orders, directing staff and volunteers out of harm's way. One final panel shifted, and she pushed a young nurse out of the falling debris just in time, taking the brunt of the collapse herself. A beam struck her shoulder, sending her to the ground, pain searing through her body. Julian's heart raced. He ran to her side, pulling her from the debris, his usual calm replaced with urgency and raw concern. "Ava, stay with me!" he shouted, checking for injuries. Her breathing was shallow but steady. I'm okay," she gasped, wincing. "Everyone else safe?" "They are," he said tightly, brushing debris from her hair. "You did it. You saved them all. But you scared me half to death." Back at the Foundation headquarters, Julian watched over her as she was treated for bruises and a sprained shoulder. He stood silently at her bedside, the gravity of her actions settling on him. He had watched her sacrifice countless times, but seeing her risk herself so completely, without hesitation, without concern for herself, drove home the realization that she wasn't just brave, she was extraordinary. He knelt beside her, voice soft. "You've done more than anyone could ask. You've risked yourself, saved lives, and changed everything. And because of that, I've made a decision, one that affects both of us." Ava, exhausted but alert, turned her gaze to him. "What decision?" Julian's eyes were steady, sincere. "I want you to know that I will not let you face the world alone anymore. You've earned my trust, my respect, and my commitment. Not as an employee, not as a volunteer, but as my partner. In this work, in life, together. Ava's eyes widened, her heart pounding. She realized what he meant. This was not a casual offer of assistance. This was an acknowledgement of everything she had sacrificed, and a pledge that her courage would not go unsupported. She whispered, unable to find the words. You don't need words, he said softly. Your actions have spoken louder than anything could. I've watched you risk yourself for others time and time again, and I've decided to stand with you, to act with you, to protect what you protect. Days turned into weeks, and their partnership grew stronger. The new clinics were established, staffed, and operating efficiently. Ava led teams with confidence. Julian provided resources and oversight, and together they transformed lives across the city. But beyond the professional achievements, something deeper blossomed. Their trust, forged under fire and sacrifice, became an unspoken bond. In quiet moments, they shared glimpses of vulnerability, laughter, and mutual admiration. The intensity of their connection was tempered by respect, and the admiration they held for each other was rooted in the shared trials they had faced. One evening, standing on the rooftop overlooking the city, Julian took Ava's hand. I've watched your courage, your sacrifices, your heart, and I've made a decision that changes everything, not just for you, but for me. You're my equal, my partner, my anchor. Whatever comes, we face it together. Ava squeezed his hand, her chest swelling with a mixture of relief, pride, and something more intimate. And I trust you, Julian. Completely. Months later, the city recognized the work of the foundation, and Ava's role was lauded. Yet she never sought the spotlight. She continued to give tirelessly, now with Julian's support, resources, and partnership, ensuring her sacrifices were sustainable, not destructive. And Julian, who had watched her sacrifice and made the decision to act, realized that his life had changed just as profoundly as hers. He had found someone who shared his vision, matched his courage, and inspired him to act with heart as well as strategy. They had faced danger, crises, and impossible decisions. But through it all, Ava's selflessness and determination had transformed not only lives around her, but also the life of the man who had watched, waited, and finally decided. Standing together on that rooftop, looking at the lights of the city they were changing, Julian turned to her and whispered, "Thank you for risking everything." Ava smiled softly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right, but I'm glad you made your decision." He took her hand, the grip firm and reassuring. "And I will make every decision from here on with you beside me. Whatever comes, we face it together." Under the night sky, Ava understood the truth. Her sacrifices had not gone unnoticed, and Julian's decision to act had changed everything. Together, they were stronger, braver, and capable of facing any challenge. And for the first time, she felt that her courage and heart had not only saved others, but had also transformed her own destiny. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.